In a hospital bed, barely conscious, I heard my children outside. They were planning my funeral and their inheritance. My son called my cherished memories junk. I couldn't move, but a silent fury ignited. They think I'm gone, but they're about to learn that some spirits refuse to die. This is my story. Listen closely. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. The soft hum of medical machinery was a constant, almost soothing lullaby in Eleanor Vance's ears, a stark contrast to the sharp whispers that pierced through her hazy consciousness. Her eyes, heavy with the weight of her stroke, fluttered, unable to fully open. Yet her hearing, cruelly sharp, caught every word from just beyond the hospital room door, left slightly ajar. The beach house should fetch at least 2 million, Marcus, her oldest son, stated, his voice devoid of any warmth, purely transactional. 2 million. He wasn't talking about memories of sun-drenched summers, of her late husband Arthur teaching the children to swim, or the quiet evenings watching sunsets from the porch. He was talking about cold, hard cash. Then Sophia, her daughter, chimed in, her voice a little breathy with anticipation. What about Mom's jewelry? That sapphire set. It must be worth something. Surely. Eleanor's sapphire set, a gift from Arthur on their 25th anniversary, a symbol of enduring love, now merely something. Sophia, always ambitious, always calculating, even in this sacred, vulnerable space. Ethan, the youngest, usually the quietest, surprised her with his swift complicity. I've already contacted a buyer for the art collection. Mr. Davies expressed interest in the Renoir sketch in the antique Japanese prints. Her art collection, curated over decades, each piece holding a story, an echo of moments shared with Arthur, now reduced to a list of items for sale. A tremor ran through Eleanor, a silent earthquake within her failing body. She forced her eyes with every ounce of strength she possessed to crack open. The world was a blurry mess of sterile white and muted colors, but the feeling was blindingly clear, immense, suffocating betrayal. They were dividing her life, her legacy, her very essence, while she lay trapped between worlds. Then Marcus again, his tone dismissive. Nobody wants that sentimental junk, just the valuable pieces. Sentimental junk. 68 years of memories, of love, of joy and sorrow, of building a home and a life with Arthur, reduced to junk by her own son. The words were a brand, searing themselves into her soul, twisting the last remnants of her affection for him into something cold and brittle. Just then, Nurse Jenny, a kind woman with weary eyes, bustled into the room, her presence a sudden, welcome shift in the oppressive atmosphere. She checked Eleanor's vitals, her touch gentle, professional. Families get ahead of themselves, she whispered, as if sensing the invisible poison hanging in the air, a quiet acknowledgement that spoke volumes. It was a small comfort, a fleeting validation that Eleanor wasn't entirely alone in her assessment. A moment later, Marcus pushed the door fully open and stepped in, a saccharine mask of concern plastered across his face. Any change, nurse? He asked, his voice now artificially soft, too gentle. Nurse Jenny gave a faint smile. Your mother's condition is stabilizing, Mr. Vance. We're seeing some promising signs. Eleanor felt a jolt of hope, a tiny flicker in the darkness. But Marcus, standing over her, betrayed his true feelings with a microscopic twitch at the corner of his mouth, a flash of annoyance. He recovered quickly, though. Mom was never good with finances, he began, a blatant lie dripping from his lips. Dad always handled everything. The lie stung more than the earlier dismissal of her memories. Eleanor had been the practical one, the one who balanced the books, who managed their investments while Arthur lost himself in his art and his academic pursuits. She had been the backbone, the quiet force. Nurse Jenny, however, met his gaze with a calm, steady look. Stroke recovery can be unpredictable, Mr. Vance. Many patients regain far more function than initially anticipated, especially with intensive therapy. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He forced another tight smile. We're just being prepared, nurse. It's a difficult time for all of us. Prepared for what? Her demise? Her continued inability to speak? To defend herself? Eleanor lay there, a prisoner in her own body, a silent witness to her family's callousness. She wished they remembered Eleanor Vance, the woman who had built a life, who had loved fiercely, who had faced challenges head-on. Not just Arthur's wife, not just a collection of assets, but a person, vibrant and resilient. She wished they saw her, truly saw her, before it was too late. Marcus lingered, a silent sentinel by Eleanor's bedside after Nurse Jenny had left. But his gaze wasn't one of filial love or worry. It was detached, almost clinical. He looked at her not as his mother, but as an object, in a state to be dissected. His eyes swept across her frail form, taking in the IV lines, the oxygen cannula, the monitor beeping steadily beside her. Eleanor could almost feel him appraising her, calculating the last breath, the final sigh that would trigger the unlocking of her assets. It was a cold, alien assessment, stripping her of dignity, of personhood. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, false comfort. "We're taking care of everything, Mom. You don't need to worry about a thing." The words meant to soothe felt like a smothering blanket, choking the last vestiges of her control. Don't worry? How could she not worry when they were dismantling her entire life, piece by piece before her very eyes? A silent scream tore through Eleanor's mind, echoing in the vast empty space where her voice should have been. Her body felt like a leaden shell, a cruel prison. Every muscle strained, every nerve ending, screamed in frustration. Yet she remained immobile, unable to scream, unable to protest, unable to even twitch an eyelid in defiance. The helplessness was a bitter taste in her mouth, thick and suffocating. Marcus, seemingly satisfied with his performance, reached out and patted her hand. The gesture was stiff, awkward, a mere formality, devoid of any genuine affection. It felt like a perfunctory farewell, a final courtesy before turning away from the inconvenient reality of her suffering. As he left the room, his hushed voice drifted back, joining Sophia and Ethan in the hallway, now discussing the disposition of her antique dining set, furniture. My life, my memories reduced to furniture. A deep, searing betrayal ignited a fire within Eleanor, a molten core of rage that somehow bypassed her paralyzed limbs and settled deep in her soul. No, this wasn't theirs to sell. Not her beach house, imbued with Arthur's laughter and the children's innocent joy. Not her sapphire set, a testament to enduring love. Not her art, each canvas a window to a shared memory. A silent iron resolve hardened in her chest. She would protect what wasn't theirs to pillage. With newfound purpose, Eleanor closed her eyes, focusing every ounce of her remaining energy. It was a monumental effort, a battle of will against a failing body. She concentrated, willing, pushing, commanding. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tiniest flicker of movement graced her left index finger. A tremor, a slight twitch. It was barely visible, but to Eleanor it was a thunderclap, a declaration of war. I am still here, I am still a fighter. Nurse Jenny's gentle words echoed in her mind. You're a fighter, Eleanor. And in that moment she vowed to be just that. That night, as the hospital hummed with the quiet rhythm of life and death, Eleanor made a decision. They thought she was fading, a ghost already, but she would rise. She would teach them a lesson they would never forget, a lesson carved not in stone, but in their greedy, calculating hearts. 3 days later, the sound of Sophia's voice cut through Eleanor's medicated haze. She was on the phone just outside the room, oblivious to Eleanor's heightened awareness. Yes, we're proceeding with the sale as planned. No, there's been no recovery expected. Sophia's words were a brutal lie, designed to reassure whoever was on the other end, probably the real estate agent for the beach house. Eleanor knew better. Just yesterday, Dr. Chandra, a neurologist with kind eyes and an honest demeanor, had spoken to Nurse Jenny about her. Remarkable progress, he'd said, especially considering the initial severity. We're seeing more motor neuron activity than anticipated. She's a strong woman. Sophia's lie twisted the knife in Eleanor's gut. Sophia continued, it's all part of our pre-inheritance planning, you understand. Pre-inheritance planning. Eleanor's mind seethed. Such a clinical term for theft. It stripped their actions of any moral implication, sanitizing the raw greed that fueled them. Eleanor feigned sleep, her breathing even, her expression peaceful. But inside, her mind raced, connecting the dots, charting a course. She needed more strength, more time. She needed to observe, to listen, to understand the full scope of their avarice before she could truly act. Time was indeed running out, not just for the beach house, a place that held a secret promise, a sacred trust that her children knew absolutely nothing about, but for her to reclaim her life, her dignity, her very identity. The next morning brought the familiar routine of physical therapy. A young, earnest therapist named Mark gently guided Eleanor through her exercises, bending her knee, flexing her ankle, meticulously documenting every tiny flicker of response. For Eleanor, it was more than just physical movement. It was a battleground, a place where she pushed against the confines of her damaged body, silently fighting for every inch of control. Today, however, her focus wasn't just on her limbs, it was on her voice. She concentrated, harnessing the same fiery resolve that had produced the finger twitch. She visualized the words, formed them in her mind, willing them from thought to sound. The effort was agonizing, like pushing against a concrete wall, but the urgency fueled her. Finally, with a monumental push, a raspy, weak voice emerged, startling Mark. I need to make a call. Mark's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and delight. He immediately fetched Nurse Jenny, who rushed in, her face alight with a genuine smile. Eleanor, that's wonderful. Your first coherent sentence? Her warmth was a balm, a stark contrast to the cold calculation of her children. Eleanor, though exhausted, pressed on. She couldn't waste this precious burst of energy. My lawyer, she rasped, the words laborious, each syllable a victory. She watched Nurse Jenny's expression, making sure the message was clear. Not my children, never them. To emphasize her point, Eleanor managed a small, deliberate shake of her head, a movement that sent a tremor of pain through her neck, but felt profoundly empowering. Lawyer, important. There was an unspoken urgency in her eyes, a silent plea that Nurse Jenny, thankfully, seemed to grasp. Understood, Eleanor, Nurse Jenny said, her voice soft but firm. I'll check with Dr. Chandra about you using the phone. I'm sure he'll agree given your remarkable progress. She squeezed Eleanor's hand reassuringly before leaving the room. True to her word, Nurse Jenny returned shortly, a satisfied smile on her face. Dr. Chandra says it's perfectly fine. Within limits, of course. We don't want to overdo it. She produced a hospital phone, a simple cordless device, and carefully positioned it on the adjustable tray table beside Eleanor's bed. Now came the next hurdle. Recalling the number, Eleanor closed her eyes, picturing Mr. Davies' business card, the elegant script of his name, the precise sequence of digits. It was a mental marathon, but one she was determined to win. Laboriously, syllable by painstaking syllable, she recited the number, pausing after each digit to gather breath and strength. 5, 5, 5, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1. Nurse Jenny patiently dialed, her finger hovering, waiting for Eleanor to confirm each digit. The ringing on the other end felt like an eternity. Then a crisp, professional voice answered, Davies Legal. Mr. Davies, please, Eleanor croaked, her voice barely a whisper. This is Mr. Davies. Who's calling? Eleanor Vance, she managed, a surge of adrenaline pushing the words out. Stroke getting better. Need help. Emergency. There was a slight pause on the other end, a flicker of surprise, then immediate, focused concern. Eleanor, good heavens, yes, I heard you were. I'm so relieved to hear your voice. Of course, anything. Whatever you need, Eleanor. Mr. Davies' familiar, reassuring tone was like a lifeline. He had been Arthur's lawyer, then hers for decades, a man of unwavering integrity. Eleanor took a shallow, shaky breath. Beach house. My children selling it. The Malibu property. They don't know. The last phrase was barely audible, loaded with a secret that gnawed at her. She hoped Mr. Davies understood the implications. They're selling the Malibu property? Without your express consent? Mr. Davies' voice hardened, a hint of steel entering his otherwise calm demeanor. That's highly irregular, Eleanor. Rest assured, I'll put a stop to it immediately. Is there anything specific you want me to do? Eleanor whispered another series of numbers, a secret phone number, known only to her and Arthur, a number linked to the very core of the Malibu property's true purpose. Call this number. Got it, Mr. Davies confirmed, his pen scratching on paper. I'll make that call right after we finish here. Consider it handled, Eleanor. Then came the crucial instruction, the cornerstone of her burgeoning plan. No, Eleanor breathed, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. Don't inform them of my improvement. Let me surprise them. The thought of their faces, their shock, was a potent motivator. Understood, Mr. Davies said, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. Perhaps surprise, perhaps admiration. I'll visit tomorrow, Eleanor, with some papers for you to review and sign regarding your current estate and a restraining order if necessary for the property. We'll ensure your wishes are carried out. Eleanor closed her eyes, the phone falling from her weakened grip onto the bed. She was utterly exhausted, every muscle screaming in protest, but a profound sense of triumph settled over her. The first countermove had been made. The game had begun. The antiseptic scent of the hospital room was broken the next day by the crisp, familiar scent of Mr. Davies's expensive cologne. But he wasn't alone. Trailing behind him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief, was Clara, Eleanor's eldest granddaughter, Sophia's daughter. Dark circles smudged beneath Clara's eyes, a testament to sleepless nights, and her usually vibrant energy seemed muted, subdued. "Grandma!" Clara rushed to the bedside, her voice choked with emotion, her hand gently taking Eleanor's. They told us you might never wake up properly, that you might never be the same." Her words were a raw echo of the malicious narrative her mother and uncles had been spreading, a lie designed to hasten their plunder. Eleanor, her heart swelling with a desperate love for this loyal young woman, weakly squeezed Clara's hand. The effort was immense, but she needed Clara to feel her presence, her reassurance. "No, no, my Clara." Her voice was still a strained whisper, but the emotion behind it was clear. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, his expression a mixture of solemnity and quiet pride. "Eleanor, Clara was quite concerned about some of the decisions being made regarding your affairs. She contacted me independently yesterday, wanting to understand the legalities of it all." He gave Clara a subtle, approving nod. Clara, at 22, was studying law, and Eleanor knew her granddaughter possessed a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of justice. Clara, encouraged, leaned closer, her voice dropping to a furious whisper. "Mom and the uncles, they're selling everything, Grandma, everything. The beach house is already in escrow, they've signed papers, and they're even selling Grandpa's record collection, the rare jazz albums you both loved." The news hit Eleanor like a physical blow. The beach house already in escrow, Arthur's records, his treasured collection, being sold off like common commodities. Her heart rate monitor, usually a steady cadence, spiked, its insistent beeps a testament to the pain searing through her. Clara noticed the monitor's alarm and squeezed her hand tighter. "It's not right, Grandma," she fumed, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "They act like like you're just an estate to be divided." Mr. Davies, sensing Eleanor's distress, stepped in. "Eleanor, regarding the beach house, I've contacted the number you gave me. The gentleman on the other end was quite concerned by the news of the sale. He's flying in tomorrow." Noah, the name echoed in Eleanor's mind, a quiet resonance. The secret, the true purpose of the Malibu beach house was stirring. Its protector was coming. A flicker of triumph ignited in Eleanor's eyes. This was the first real threat to her children's plans, a complication they hadn't foreseen. Eleanor turned her gaze to Clara, her eyes conveying a silent plea. "Need your help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Pretend you don't know and I'm awake. Watch them, report back." She needed an inside source, someone her children wouldn't suspect, someone who could be her eyes and earbuds in the house that was rapidly being stripped bare. "Of course, Grandma," Clara whispered back, her face hardening with determination. "I'll be your spy." Eleanor then made another request, an essential tool for her covert operation. "Private cell phone, Mr. Davies nodded, already anticipating. From his briefcase, he produced a small, discreet smartphone. "It's fully charged and programmed with my number, and a few others you might need, including an emergency contact. It's untraceable by conventional means, and they won't find it on any hospital inventory. Clara took the phone, her fingers expertly examining it. I'll hide it in your water pitcher drawer when I leave, Grandma. It'll be safe there. One more thing, Eleanor, Mr. Davies added, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Marcus has been making rather insistent inquiries about the beach house title, asking about any potential encumbrances or unusual clauses. It seems the sale is facing some unexpected delays. Eleanor felt a faint, genuine smile touch her lips. Good. Her children were discovering the complications. Her actions, even from her sickbed, were already creating ripples, disrupting their greedy efficiency. The thought was deeply satisfying. As Mr. Davies and Clara prepared to leave, Eleanor felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. But it was a different kind of fatigue now, one tinged with satisfaction. She drifted into an uneasy sleep, her mind a kaleidoscope of images. The beach house bathed in the golden light of sunset. Arthur's laugh, and then a dream, a set of keys, the unmistakable heavy keys to the Malibu property, being placed not into the grasping hands of her children, but into someone else's, someone she trusted implicitly. The true inheritance was not theirs to claim. Don't miss a single twist in Eleanor's incredible fight for justice. If you're captivated by her story, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Eleanor's children, Marcus, Sophia, and Ethan, made their obligatory visit later that morning. Eleanor, ever the actress, maintained her facade of a semi-conscious patient, her eyes fluttering occasionally, her breathing shallow and even. But beneath the surface, her mind was razor-sharp, observing every gesture, every word, studying them like specimens under a microscope. Marcus, ever the showman, spoke loudly as if addressing a deaf audience. The house is being sold to a lovely family, Mom, a young couple with children. They'll really enjoy the beach. A saccharine lie. Eleanor knew from Clara's earlier report that the buyer was a ruthless development company, eager to tear down the old house and erect a soulless, modern mansion. Sophia, ever the opportunist, chimed in, her voice dripping with false sentiment. And some of your special items, Mom, will go to family members who will truly treasure them. Treasure them for their resale value, Eleanor silently amended, knowing Sophia was already mentally assigning her sapphire set to a private auction. Only Ethan, always the softest, the most conflicted, approached her bedside with a hint of genuine concern. He placed a gentle hand on her arm. Whoa, Mom. Mom, if you can hear me, I hope we're doing what you'd want. Eleanor felt a pang of something akin to pity for Ethan, but it was quickly swallowed by the larger tide of betrayal. His intentions might be slightly less venal, but his complicity was no less damaging. Their 15-minute charade concluded with practiced efficiency. As they turned to leave, just outside the door, Marcus's phone rang, its shrill noise echoing in the quiet corridor. Eleanor heard his voice, sharp with irritation. What do you mean there's a problem with the title? He stomped off, his voice fading into a string of exasperated complaints. A faint buzz vibrated from Eleanor's hidden phone. With immense effort, she retrieved it from the water pitcher drawer, her fingers fumbling slightly. A text message. Arrived in L.A., meeting with Mr. Davies first. Will come to hospital this afternoon. Stay strong. Noah. A surge of relief, hot and exhilarating, coursed through her. Noah was here. The game was about to change. Nurse Jenny entered, noticing Marcus's agitated departure. Mr. Vance seemed rather upset about something to do with the beach house title, she remarked, her eyes gently questioning Eleanor. Eleanor managed a slight nod, then with a concentrated effort, whispered, Beach house, not what they think. Nurse Jenny's expression shifted from curiosity to intrigue, a silent understanding passing between them. Precisely at 3 p.m., Noah Hayes arrived. He wasn't a tall man, but his presence filled the room with a quiet strength. His eyes, kind and deep-set, immediately met Eleanor's. He gently took her outstretched hand, and Eleanor squeezed back, tears welling in her eyes. Noah, she rasped, the name of profound release. Thank you. Eleanor, Noah replied, his voice calm but with an underlying current of controlled anger. Mr. Davies told me what's happening. Your children are selling the beach house, my beach house. Eleanor nodded, her gaze steady. Never told them that you gave me the house after Olivia died. It's been in my name for 8 years, to protect it. The words were a bitter truth, a testament to a long-held secret, a safeguard against exactly this kind of avarice. Just as the depth of the revelation settled, the door burst open. Marcus stood there, his face flushed with anger, his usually composed demeanor shattered. Sophia and Ethan hovered behind him, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning dread. "Mom, what the hell is going on with the beach house?" Marcus demanded, his voice echoing loudly in the sterile room. Noah, without flinching, slowly stood from his chair, extending a hand towards Marcus. His voice was steady, composed, utterly devoid of fear. "Noah Hayes, I believe you're trying to sell my house." Marcus stared at Noah's outstretched hand as if it were a venomous snake. Then his eyes snapped back to Eleanor, then to the unfamiliar man. "Your house? That's ridiculous. That's my mother's property." Noah simply lowered his hand, his gaze unwavering. "Actually, your mother and father transferred ownership of the Malibu property to me 8 years ago, with a life estate granted to Eleanor, of course, allowing her to live there indefinitely. It's completely legal." Eleanor, seeing the perfect moment, abandoned her pretense of frailty. She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes blazing with a newfound fire. "Not a stranger. Noah is Olivia's son." The words hung in the air, a devastating bombshell. Marcus's face went slack with shock, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Sophia gasped, clutching her chest. Ethan, however, finally found his voice, a whisper of disbelief. "Mom, you're awake. You understand us?" Eleanor met his gaze, then Marcus's, then Sophia's. Her voice, though still weak, carried the weight of her suffering and her resolve. "Everything. I heard everything. Selling my things, dividing my life while I'm still alive." The accusation hung heavy in the air, undeniable and crushing. A discreet call from Marcus on his private line revealed his lawyer's confirmation. "Mr. Vance," the muffled voice said from the phone, "the title transfer appears completely legitimate. The deed was recorded 8 years ago. It's undeniable." Enraged, Marcus turned on Noah, his face contorted. "A charity case? You gave it to a charity case?" Noah, though visibly stung, maintained his composure. "No, Marcus. Your parents gave it to their adopted son. Olivia was my biological mother, and after she passed away, your parents, my aunt and uncle, legally adopted me. This house was a gift, a fresh start." Before Marcus could escalate further, Dr. Chandra, alerted by the raised voices, intervened. "Mr. Vance, your mother needs quiet. This is highly inappropriate behavior in a hospital setting." Marcus, still seething, shot a venomous glance at Eleanor. "This isn't over, Mom," he snarled, before grabbing Ethan and storming out, Sophia trailing in their wake, her face pale with shock. Eleanor watched them go, her heart heavy, but a fierce determination burning within her. The truth was out. The first stone of her revenge had been cast. But this was only the beginning. By evening, the hospital air seemed to crackle with the residual anger from Marcus's earlier outburst. Sophia, however, brought her own tempest. She stormed into Eleanor's room, her expensive designer handbag swinging wildly, her face a mask of furious indignation. "What is this insanity about the beach house, Mom? Daniel, our lawyer, says you gave it away. To a stranger." Her voice was a hiss, punctuated by disbelief and outrage. Eleanor met her daughter's furious gaze with unwavering resolve. Her voice was still weak, but her conviction was absolute. "Not a stranger, Sophia. Noah, he is Olivia's son." Sophia scoffed, tossing her head. "Oh, him. The one you wasted all that money on for medical school? Mom, have you completely lost your mind? You're giving away our family property to him? This is our legacy." "My money," Eleanor stated, each word slow and deliberate, infused with the weight of her decisions. "My choice, Vaughn Buss." She felt no regret. Olivia, Noah's mother, had been like a daughter to her, a bright light tragically extinguished too soon. Helping Noah achieve his dreams had been a profound act of love and remembrance, not a waste. "Our family legacy," Sophia insisted, her voice rising in pitch, "not some random charity case." Olivia was family, and Eleanor countered, her voice gaining strength. Not by blood, by choice, by mean. The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the bonds of affection that Sophia, in her greed, had forgotten or never truly understood. Sophia just scoffed again, a sound filled with deep-seated betrayal, though it was Eleanor who had been betrayed. Just then, Clara entered the room, carrying a tray of Eleanor's dinner. She assessed the tension instantly, her eyes flicking from her grandmother's resolute face to her mother's contorted features. "Dinner, Grandma," she said, her voice admirably neutral, though Eleanor could see the subtle tightening around her granddaughter's mouth. Sophia, still reeling, rounded on Clara. "Did you know about this, Clara? About the beach house? About Mom giving it away to him?" Clara, with impressive composure, placed the tray down. "I knew Grandma helped Noah with medical school, Mom. He's doing really well. In fact, I'm thinking of pre-med myself now." She gave a small, innocent shrug, a subtle deflection that expertly sidestepped Sophia's direct accusation about the house, while also delivering a small barb about her own aspirations, which Sophia had always dismissed. Sophia, momentarily caught off guard by Clara's revelation about pre-med, quickly recovered her anger. "Mom, you've made a terrible mistake, a profound error in judgment. We're going to challenge this. You can't just give away millions of dollars of family property." "Nothing to fix," Eleanor interjected, her voice firm. "Legal, proper, my decision." The satisfaction of seeing Sophia's entitled worldview crumble was immense. For a fleeting second, Sophia's face softened, her voice cracking with something that sounded like genuine hurt. "A decision you never discussed with your own children. Your real children." In that brief glimpse, Eleanor saw a flicker of the insecure child Sophia had once been, longing for her mother's approval, now twisted by expectation and greed. But the vulnerability vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by hard resolve. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." As if on cue, Noah re-entered the room. Sophia's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. She shot a final, venomous look at Eleanor. "This conversation isn't over, Mom," she stated, her voice icy, before turning on her heel and sweeping out of the room, her presence leaving a chill in her wake. Eleanor let out a shaky breath, exhausted but exhilarated. She looked at Noah, then at Clara. "Clara is interested in medicine," she shared, a hint of pride in her voice. Noah smiled, his earlier tension easing. "That's wonderful, Clara. If you ever want to talk about residency or anything about the journey, please don't hesitate." Clara's face lit up, a genuine smile replacing her earlier apprehension. Then Clara, with a clandestine glance around, produced a small, leather-bound photo album from her bag. I rescued this, Grandma, from the condo. They were already sorting through things for the estate sale." She handed it to Eleanor. It was an album filled with photos of Olivia and Eleanor, of Arthur and Olivia, pictures of Gorsh Boy and simple family moments at the beach house. Eleanor ran her fingers over the faded images, a wave of memories washing over her. Olivia, a vibrant, kind soul, Eleanor's beloved niece who had suffered so much. Olivia had loved the beach house more than anyone, dreaming of having her own little place there one day. The transfer of the deed to Noah had been a promise kept, a living memorial to Olivia's spirit, and a way to protect the place from the very avarice her children were now displaying. It was a secret Arthur had helped her orchestrate, knowing the true depth of their children's materialistic tendencies. I protected them too much," Eleanor admitted, her voice thick with regret. "Never showed them the real world, the struggles, the true value of things beyond money." Noah looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Do you have any more surprises for them, Eleanor?" Eleanor managed a faint, knowing smile. "Wait until they try to access the bank accounts. Arthur and I had a contingency for everything." Just then Mr. Davies returned, a serious expression on his face, carrying a slim folder of documents. "Eleanor," he said, "I have the papers ready. We need to officially confirm your competency and formalize some new directives for your estate. Given recent events, it's vital we act quickly." Eleanor nodded, feeling a wave of profound exhaustion, but her determination remained unshaken. This battle was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Despite Noah's gentle objections and Nurse Jenny's mild protests, Eleanor was adamant. I need to go, she whispered, her gaze fixed on the hospital window, beyond which lay the world her children were so eagerly dismantling. I need to see it. It was more than a desire. It was a visceral need to witness the desecration, to fuel the fire of her resolve. So with Mr. Davies' assistance, a hospital wheelchair, and Noah by her side, Eleanor left the sterile confines of her room and headed towards her condo. The sight of her building, usually a haven of quiet elegance, now felt like a violation. Large, crude signs plastered across the manicured lawn screamed, "Estate sale, everything must go." The bold, impersonal lettering felt like a vulgar assault on her privacy, on the sanctity of her home. Vulgar, Eleanor murmured, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. As they approached the entrance, a stranger emerged, carefully carrying Arthur's antique chess set, a beautiful hand-carved piece that had been in his family for generations, always destined for a grandchild who shared his strategic mind. Eleanor felt a sharp pang, a physical ache in her chest. That set was meant for Ethan's son, young Arthur, who loved strategy games, but now it was gone, swallowed by the impersonal maw of the estate sale. Inside the condo was a chaotic hive of activity. Strangers, their faces devoid of respect, wandered through her once pristine rooms, poking through her possessions, haggling over items that held decades of memories. It was a grotesque parody of home, a marketplace of her past. She saw Marcus in the living room, haggling over her Georgian silver tea set, a wedding gift from her great-aunt. $700 for the set, if you're buying today, he stated, his voice booming with the practiced ease of a seasoned vendor, not a grieving son. $700? It was worth 10 times that, but more importantly, it was a tangible link to her family history, now reduced to a quick transaction. In the bedroom, Sophia held up Eleanor's favorite cashmere sweater, a soft, powder blue garment Arthur had given her for their last Christmas together. $40, Sophia announced to a woman who barely glanced at it. Eleanor felt a fresh wave of nausea. That sweater was imbued with Arthur's scent, a comfort through lonely nights. Now it was just $40. She forced herself to breathe, to witness every act of desecration, letting the cold fury settle deeper within her. Each insult was a drop of fuel on her burning resolve. Clara, however, was a beacon of defiance. She stood guard in a corner of the study, a stack of photo albums and old letters clutched to her chest. "These items are not for sale," she insisted to a hovering woman, her voice firm. "These are family historical documents, private property." Marcus strode over, irritation etched on his face. "Clara, anything we're keeping has already been removed. Everything else goes. Don't be difficult." "These are Grandma's private journals," Clara retorted, her voice rising. "Her letters from Grandpa during the war. They're not for sale, Marcus. They're priceless." Eleanor, wheeled quietly by Noah, observed the scene. This was why she needed to be here, to see their true faces unmasked by hospital pretense. Noah wheeled her towards the pantry, a small, discreet space where Eleanor knew Arthur kept a hidden safe. In the quiet of the pantry, Clara leaned in, her voice low. "Grandma, Mom found the safe. They're bringing someone to drill it open tomorrow morning. They think it's where Arthur kept his valuable papers." Before Eleanor could react, Sophia burst into the pantry, her eyes blazing with renewed fury. "Mom, what the hell are you doing here?" She glared at Eleanor, then at Clara, her anger a palpable force. Eleanor met her daughter's gaze, her voice weak but steady. "Visiting my home. While it's still mine." Sophia rounded on Clara, her face contorted in accusation. "You knew about this? You've been conspiring behind our backs, haven't you, you little traitor?" Clara stood her ground, her chin high. "Someone needed to look out for Grandma's interests, Mom. You certainly weren't." Just then Marcus appeared, his face attempting a look of conciliation, though his eyes still held a furious glint. "Mom, you don't understand. This is all for your benefit. We're just liquidating assets to pay for your long-term care, for your recovery." Eleanor fixed him with a stare, her voice gaining a surprising strength. "Liar. The doctor said good prognosis. You never asked. You never wanted to know." The words were a venomous dart, piercing his flimsy facade. Noah, sensing the escalating tension and Eleanor's increasing exhaustion, gently took hold of the wheelchair handles. Eleanor, perhaps it's time we go." As Noah began to turn her chair, Eleanor delivered her parting shot, her voice ringing with a chilling clarity that startled even her children. "Enjoy the sale," she said, her eyes sweeping over the ravaged rooms, over her children's shocked faces. "Everything has a price, even lessons, about consequences." The implications hung heavy in the air, a promise and a threat, as Noah wheeled her out, leaving her children to stew in the chaotic remnants of her past, in the unsettling promise of their future. Back in her hospital room, which now felt more like a command center, Eleanor received the update from Mr. Davies, delivered quietly, almost reverently. "They've opened the safe, Eleanor. Daniel, Marcus's lawyer, has the contents." Eleanor felt a thrill of anticipation. The trap was sprung. Within the hour, the storm broke. Marcus burst into the room, followed by Sophia and Ethan, their faces a mixture of fury and disbelief. Marcus waved a thick folder of documents like a weapon, his face crimson. "What the hell is this, Mom?" he roared, his voice shaking with rage. "A trust? A trust that gives half your estate to this outsider? And conditions? Conditions that we have to fulfill just to receive our own inheritance?" Eleanor met his gaze, unflinching. "That, Marcus, is my will, and Arthur's." "But why?" Sophia wailed, her eyes wide. "Why would Dad agree to such insanity?" Eleanor's voice was calm, cutting through their hysteria. "Your father co-signed every document, every single one. In fact, many of the ideas were his." She paused, allowing the weight of that truth to settle. "Arthur believed in family first, Marcus, but his definition of family was more than just blood. Olivia was my family, as much a daughter as Sophia. And Noah, after all he'd been through, became our family too. He needed us." Ethan, surprisingly, was the one who broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, why didn't you tell us all these years? Why the secrecy?" Eleanor's gaze swept over them, a hint of sadness mingling with her resolve. "Would you have understood, Ethan? Would you have accepted it?" She reminded them of their past objections, the subtle eye rolls, the thinly veiled disdain whenever she spoke of helping Noah through medical school. "Your father and I watched you all growing entitled," she continued, her voice low and steady, "caring more about things, more about money, than about people. We saw what was happening, and we made our choices." Marcus let out a sarcastic laugh. "So this was some kind of test then, and apparently we failed." Mr. Davies, who had discreetly entered the room during the confrontation, stepped forward. "The conditions are legally binding," he explained, his voice calm and authoritative. "Each of you is required to complete 500 hours of documented community service. There are clauses regarding financial responsibility and ethical philanthropic planning. The trust stipulates these must be met before full access to the remaining inheritance is granted." "This is ridiculous." Marcus exploded. "We don't have time for charity work. We have businesses to run, lives to live." "I found time," Eleanor interjected, a sharp edge to her voice. "Your father and I volunteered hundreds of hours every year. It's called giving back." Daniel, Marcus's lawyer, a slick man with a perpetually anxious expression, stepped forward. "We'll challenge it. Undue influence. Diminished capacity." Eleanor gave a dismissive wave of her hand. "Your father was the president of a Fortune 500 company, Daniel. I was on the board of 3 major charities and managed our entire portfolio. We both planned this extensively. You'll have a very difficult time proving diminished capacity for either of us. Good luck." Ethan, his voice still quiet, asked, "Mom, those monthly payments to Noah, why?" Eleanor's gaze softened slightly as she looked at Noah, then back at her children. "Olivia, Noah's mother, saved my life, Ethan. She literally pushed me out of the way of a speeding car when I was pregnant with Sophia. She took the hit. She lost her life protecting mine, protecting Sophia's. Those payments were Arthur's promise to help her son, to give him the future she never had." She looked at Sophia, whose face was now pale with shock. "The beach house was Olivia's happy place. Her dream. We gave it to Noah for his security, for his future, just as she would have wanted." Daniel, regaining some composure, seized on a new point. "It's not really a family home anymore. You visited twice in 5 years." Eleanor nodded. That's true. Only Clara came regularly. The condo is legally mine, Daniel. However, all proceeds from its sale, past and future, are now directed into a medical trust for my long-term care. Daniel looked at her, his face a picture of bitter accusation. You're controlling everything, even from your deathbed. I wasn't dying, Eleanor corrected him, her voice strong and clear. And I certainly wasn't permanently incapacitated. You assumed? You never asked the doctors? You never bothered to ask me. Ethan, overwhelmed, simply turned and walked out, needing space to process the seismic shift in their reality. Mr. Davies confirmed quietly to Eleanor that the funds from the estate sale were now held in escrow, pending resolution of the trust's terms. Daniel, however, lingered, his eyes narrowed, his voice low and menacing. This isn't over, Mom. You can't manipulate us like this. Eleanor, energized by their shock and outrage, leaned back into her pillows, a faint smile touching her lips. She looked at Noah, her eyes sparkling with fierce determination. Worse to come, Noah, she whispered. Wait until they learn about the rest of it. This is just the beginning. Teaching them, a lesson long overdue. The game had escalated, and Eleanor, the quiet matriarch, was just getting started. A few days later, Eleanor received a quieter, more reflective visit. Ethan, her usually reserved son, came alone. He brought with him a small, delicate orchid, carefully potted, a survivor, Eleanor realized, of the condo's chaotic sale. He placed it on her bedside table, its fragile beauty a stark contrast to the ugliness of their recent interactions. I started the community service, Mom, Ethan confessed, his voice low, almost ashamed. At the local animal shelter. It's a lot different than I expected. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a weary honesty. We assumed the worst about your condition. Mom, it was easier, I think, to think of you as already gone, as just assets. The admission hung heavy in the air, a painful truth. Then a new wave of concern washed over his face. Marcus is trying to access other funds, Mom. I heard him on the phone talking about unauthorized transfers and liquidating holdings without Daniel's help. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. This was not entirely unexpected given Marcus's nature. She immediately alerted Mr. Davies via her hidden phone. Within moments, Mr. Davies confirmed all remaining accounts were secured and untouchable without Eleanor's explicit physical signature. Another layer of her protection had held firm. Later that day, Clara and Noah visited. Clara, her eyes bright, delivered another unexpected piece of news. Mom defended you, Grandma, she reported, a hint of awe in her voice. Marcus was still ranting about manipulation, and she just cut him off. Said, whatever Mom's reasons, they were her choice, Marcus. We need to respect that. Clara then turned to Eleanor, her resolve shining. I've enrolled in some online pre-med courses, Grandma. Noah's been so helpful, and your volunteer work. It really resonated. Sophia even said she'd help me look into scholarships. She's different. A flicker of genuine hope sparked within Eleanor. Perhaps the lesson was beginning to take root in unexpected places. Finally, the day arrived for Eleanor's discharge. She wasn't just leaving the hospital, she was returning to her true home, the beach house. Noah drove her there, the familiar scent of salt and sea air a balm to her soul. Mr. Davies was already there, as were Ethan and, to Eleanor's surprise, Sophia. Marcus was conspicuously absent. Sophia approached Eleanor as she was helped from the car. There was a stiffness in her posture, but also a newfound humility in her eyes. She gave Eleanor a surprisingly genuine, if awkward, kiss on the cheek. Mom, she said, her voice quiet, I'm beginning to understand. Eleanor was wheeled into the sun-drenched living room, the ocean sparkling beyond the wide windows. She settled into her favorite armchair, the familiar comfort a profound relief. This house holds truth, she declared, her voice stronger than it had been in months, echoing in the open space. About family, about promises, about what really matters. She began to speak, her voice weaving a tapestry of memories, of a friendship that had shaped her life for over 40 years. She told them about Olivia, her spirited niece, who had become a daughter of her heart. She recounted the terrifying day Olivia had saved her life, pushing her from the path of an oncoming car, sacrificing herself so Eleanor and her unborn child might live. Arthur and I never forgot that, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. This beach house was Olivia's dream, her sanctuary, and so we ensured it would be Noah's security, his fresh start, with a lifetime usage right for our family, should any of you ever need it or simply want to remember what true family means. Ethan, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. I started the literacy program, Mom, the one Dad always supported. A small smile touched his lips. It's actually rewarding, seeing the progress, the difference it makes. Sophia, looking out at the ocean, added, I'm looking into the women's shelter program. Considering the conditions, it actually makes sense. Noah, observing the fragile truce, clarified, Eleanor's condition for the transfer was that the beach house always remain available to the Vance family. It's your history too. It's meant to bring you all together, not drive you apart. Just as a fragile sense of understanding seemed to settle, the front door burst open. Marcus. His face was a thundercloud. This is manipulation, Mom, he roared, striding into the room. Arthur was vulnerable. He had cancer. You took advantage of him. Eleanor held up a hand. Let him finish, she told the others, her gaze unwavering. When Marcus finally ran out of accusations, she simply pointed to a discreetly placed tablet on the coffee table. Play it, Noah. Noah pressed a button, and the screen flickered to life. Arthur's face, a little thinner, but his eyes clear and full of warmth, filled the screen. It was a pre-recorded video made shortly before his death. Hello, my dearest family. Arthur's voice, rich and resonant, filled the room. If you're watching this, then Eleanor has finally decided it is time for you to learn some truths. Every decision we made, every document signed, was done with my full support and sound mind. We saw a growing entitlement, a focus on material wealth over genuine connection. We wanted to teach you about values, about compassion, about the difference between inheriting money and earning a legacy. He spoke of Olivia's sacrifice, Noah's strength, and their hope that his children would find their way back to what truly mattered. The video ended, leaving a stunned silence. Marcus walked out to the deck, staring at the ocean, his shoulders slumped. For a long time, he stood there, wrestling with the undeniable truth. When he finally returned, his voice was subdued, humbled. My father was a good judge of character, he murmured, his eyes sweeping over Eleanor, then Noah. He knew. He left then, not with a roar, but with a quiet, defeated step, needing time to think. 6 months later, Eleanor was fully recovered. Her strength returned, her spirit invigorated. She lived at the beach house, its rooms now filled with the warmth of genuine family. Ethan and Sophia had fully embraced the trust conditions, finding unexpected fulfillment in their community service. Marcus, after consulting with several lawyers who confirmed the ironclad nature of the trust, dropped all challenges. He had even started his community service, initially with resentment, but slowly, truly, finding it transformative. He visited Eleanor one afternoon, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. I owe you an apology, Mom, he said, looking genuinely remorseful. And Noah is impressive, truly. And then a faint, almost shy smile touched his lips. Chloe and I are expecting a daughter. We're going to name her Olivia. Eleanor hosted a gathering at the beach house, a celebration of new beginnings. All her children were there, along with Clara and Noah. In the warmth of the setting sun, Eleanor announced the launch of the Olivia Hayes Foundation for Medical Education, funded by her, and now by her children's active participation in the trust. Noah was named the director, and Clara, already excelling in her pre-med studies, the program coordinator. Later, as the last golden rays of sunlight kissed the ocean, Eleanor walked on the beach, her children by her side, the sand cool beneath her feet. She felt a profound sense of completion, not of ending, but of a circle finally closing, ready to begin anew. True legacy, she realized, wasn't about the possessions they left behind, but about the lessons they imparted, the love they shared, and the good they created together. Ethan offered her his arm, a gesture of tenderness and respect. Dad would be proud tonight, he said, his voice quiet, filled with a newfound peace. Of all of us, I think. I heard them before I saw them, their voices filtering through the hospital room door, left slightly ajar. My children, huddled in the hallway, whispering about my possessions as if I were already dead. Marcus, Daniel, Sophia, Robert, measuring my life in profit margins, coveting jewelry, selling art. They reduced my 68 years of cherished memories to sentimental junk, believing me gone, my will already decided. But from that hospital bed, a silent fury ignited. I would not fade quietly. My secret plan, crafted with Arthur years ago, began to unfold. With each whispered instruction to Mr. Davies, with Noah's arrival and with Arthur's final poignant video, the truth emerged. They discovered the beach house, not an asset for quick sale, but a trust for Noah, a legacy to Olivia. They faced conditions, not just cash, designed to teach them the values we cherished above all else. It was a difficult lesson filled with rage and disbelief, but slowly, a transformation began. Marcus named his daughter Olivia, Sophia embraced compassion, and Ethan found purpose. My fight wasn't for revenge, but for remembrance, for a legacy built on love and genuine connection, not just material wealth. Reunited at the beach house, launching the Olivia Hayes Foundation, we finally understood. True family isn't blood alone, but the choices we make, the promises we keep, and the lives we touch.